Well, good morning, everybody. It's Sunday, December 11th. And today I'm going to talk to you about, I don't know if I'm ever going to put this up, but I'm going to put it, I'm going to upload it somewhere and somebody's going to read it and not read it, but listen to it. So my name is Tracy, and thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm on a little journey of grief that I'm like 4 years deep, like 4.5 years. My situation is a little bit different. My son didn't die of cancer. He died really violently. Fast. It was 61 seconds. He was shot by the cops. I've talked about that at other times, but today I want to talk a little bit about what led up to it. I have so much rage for Massey Vanier High School. That school was awful to my son. That school was awful to me. And nobody would believe me. I was in a constant battle with the school. Even the night that my son died, when we were being not investigated, but pretty much interrogated by the BEI, even Larry had said, Tracy's enemy. The circumstances of my son's death led after my advocacy and my fight for my son and justice. I'm not sure that justice will ever be granted, and the reason for that, it was because justice delayed is justice denied. I had to fight for everything that I've learned. I'm still learning a lot, but what I'm gonna talk to you about right now is when my son was in high school. He was a bit disruptive. My son was very smart, very, very smart. All his exams that he took for the provincial government were like in the 80s, 90s. However, the school continuously failed him in his subjects, and I believe the main reason for that was because they were always suspending him. They were always sending him home. My son saw a psychologist. My son was offered services at the school, but they just never followed through. And it came to a point where, like in secondary 3, so like 15, the years, it got really worse. It started with the first vice principal, and it just continuously did not get better. There became a zero tolerance policy on my son that the coroner did bring up and say that it's just not a way to treat children, teenagers. And what the zero policy was, that as soon as they saw my son, if he was told to leave the classroom, which he had problems in 2 classrooms, it was always the same teacher. And why, when they put him ahead, he'd have the same teacher, because she's a teacher that works for children that have difficulty learning. And it's so not my son. He just had it's hard to say things like this without sounding conceited, but when I was in secondary 1 or 2, probably 2, I had an English teacher that just didn't know how to spell. I went to French school, and I remember he spelled lazy with an S, and it's just with a Z. And I've always spoken up. I've always shown what was wrong, and that's probably because my mother, was able to freaking decipher everything that was ever wrong with me. So, and my father and my sister, not my brother so much, maybe when he was younger, but mother is a whole other subject. So I always, would point out the things that people made mistakes, and it was never to elevate myself. It's just that I think that's how people learn, and that's how we learn. This is my real hair, people. I love it. Anyways, so the zero policy was that as soon as Riley was seen in a hallway, was sent to the office, they would just send him home. And it became a phenomenon of him always being home. And I never blamed Riley. And I tried to call the school and talk to them about it. But the minute I would do that, the bigger the bullseye got on him. So it was like this vicious cycle. And I wanted him to be left behind in secondary 3 because he was struggling so much from having missed so many classes, especially in math. And math was his best subject. And I remember this Sec 3 teacher saying, and that's not the one that is when he went into 4 and 5 that he had the harder teacher, but I remember this Sec 3 teacher telling me how brilliant he was in math and that he was better at math than she was. And I know that bothered them. I just know it did. And so instead of, and Riley could see the numbers in his brain, and I know they wanted him to write it out, but he had difficulties, and he could have improved, but they just didn't give him a chance because they had this zero policy, zero tolerance. And I can tell you what that does to a child. It destroys them. And it destroyed me as well. And it was like that for Sec 4 and Sec 5. And Miss Scher, if you are listening to this right now, I will never forget the words that you said to me one day when you called and told me you were sending Riley home. Mrs. Vokey Scherer, I should apologize. But you said to me, because I asked you, you said, oh, the teacher sent Riley because to the office because Riley was whatever it was. I can't even remember. And I said, what did Riley say? And you said, I don't know. I didn't ask him. And that for me was really the end of my trying. And I don't know, I think that was late Sec 4, early Sec 5. And because they kept putting him ahead, even though he failed English, even though he failed math, because they just wanted him to get the fuck out of that school. And I wish he didn't go to that school. I begged him to not go to school because I'd spend my summers bringing him up. He worked in a canteen and he was responsible and people liked him. But that school fucking hated him. And I don't care what they say, but they did, and they treated him badly. And the coroner saw it. And she read the emails that you sent to me, and that you probably sent to each other. It was awful. Awful. The zero tolerance policy was they just sent him home. They didn't listen to him. They didn't care what he had to say. You didn't care about Riley. So you have his blood on your hands. Because what you did to him. At graduation is unforgivable. I'll never forgive you for that. I thought since it was summer, school was over, he'd fucking survived the graduation, that my son was accused again
But even before that, like in April, we went to see a psychologist. Riley had some concussions. I was so much trying to get him help. And the school was really rough, and he had friends, and he was loved, and he had a good job, and he was great at his job. They loved him there. The people. But that school, Massey Vanier High School, if you can avoid to send your kid there, maybe they're better. I hope they're better, because they've got some recommendations. And my kid, my daughter went to school there after Riley died, and I just couldn't fight. And what they did with my daughter is that they just let her do whatever. She was able to just, I mean, they were like over or not. Sometimes, they hope she'd get over it, but she just, it's hard to get over death. Reagan never talked about it for a couple years. And then when she did finally talk to me about it, she wished she had died. And she told me how much she hated that school, and it was awful, and I'm sure now she misses it and loves it. But I have so much rage with the school, because when I went to the last parent-teacher that I went and I started crying, because when you're advocating for somebody that's in a lot of pain, and that's your son, and you know that the person that they're describing to you is not somebody that you know. It's not somebody that you recognize. And I went with all my papers and the psychologist papers, and I had them fill out some papers. And I was asking the history teacher, and she's the one that I was telling her Riley was getting help. And she told me, because I was crying, of course, that I was the one that needed help. That maybe I should go see somebody. Which is, again, it's just casting you aside and saying what you're saying is not matter, doesn't matter, it's all in your head. That the things around you, that the things that they're doing is not affecting you. And I believe that teachers can be bullies. I believe my kid was bullied by the teachers, and that does happen as well. So that's my story, and I'm gonna stick to it forever and ever. And I've got it on paper, and I'm gonna show you, add a little quote to that for that. So thanks for listening again. Please subscribe. I need to have this journey, and I need to record it. I wish I could write a book. I wish I could do a lot of things, but I just can't write this down, because then I start crying, and then it's just too much. So this is gonna have to be how I do it. So I hope you enjoyed the waves in the background. It's really cold, or I'd be outside. I thought maybe the sun would come up. It's, I don't know what time it is. It's 7:41. I think the sun is up now, so no sunrise. But thank you again for listening. Take care of yourselves. Let's just do better, because I know we can. I'm going to try to do better. Thanks. I'm all like crooked here. It's going to drive me nuts, but you're going to have to take me with my faults and all.